But let's get to our friend, you know her, Lee Richardson, who has an incredible journey. And I love this journey of Lee Richardson because she started as really an involved, loving mama bear, if you will, fighting for her twin sons. And one of her sons was struck in a car accident and started learning about the brain and the way that the brain heals and dealing with neurology and neurologists and all that good stuff. And ultimately leading Lee I think she studied brain health for some 30 years of Lee's existence, which is pretty amazing. But right now, Lee Richardson is the head of the Brain Performance Center and, of course, host of the podcast, Your Head with Lee Richardson. So, hey, Lee, how are you?
I'm great, Don. How are you?
I'm doing great. Getting ready to the last day of work before, the big Thanksgiving holiday. And now, are your sons, because I know they're grown now and they're successful in life thanks to a great mama bear like you. But is everybody coming home for the holidays, or how are you planning your holiday?
No, nobody's coming home for the holidays. And one I'm so proud of. He and his partner just moved to Nice, France.
Wow.
And the other moved to Richmond, Virginia with his wife and baby. So we're just going to go see friends out in California and make the best of it.
Oh, that's, every Thanksgiving holiday, is different. And so that's a fun one to spend it with friends who are like family. Lee, I know that there was this USA Today survey that said 88% of all of us in the United States of America, we admit to routinely arguing with family members at Thanksgiving. So the family comes around, and what do people do? They talk about the one thing you should never talk about at the Thanksgiving table. That's politics, or I don't know, maybe where all the bodies are buried in the family. But I know you have some advice for us this holiday season.
Absolutely. And, I think this year is going to be a little bit worse than last year because we're 1 year closer to the next election.
Yes.
And that just fuels the fire. And what I really, and almost in some families, it's becoming part of the Thanksgiving tradition. You've got your turkey, you've got your stuffing, and then we've got the argument between dad and whoever's in the mood. And everybody knows that no one ever wins an argument. And so I encourage people before Thanksgiving, say, you know what, if we're going to fight about it, if we're going to argue about it, can we do it now? It's Wednesday. Call them up and say, if we're going to go there, can we just do it now so that the rest of the family won't have to listen to it again? And that suggestion usually doesn't, go very far because people don't want to deal with it. And they don't want to deal with it today any more than they do tomorrow. But what I do encourage, let's be a little bit polite in how we argue. Let's don't interrupt. Let's don't talk over people. Let's don't cut people off. And there's one thing that I encourage people to think about saying, and that is, you may be right.
Wow. I don't think that'll ever happen. It's a nice process. It's a nice thought, but I don't anticipate I don't anticipate hearing that. Can you imagine? That's just a fun thing to say, though. It's a fun thing to go like, you know what? You're right. Pass the potatoes, will you?
You don't even have to say you're right. You may be right.
Oh.
And I may be right. But let's put some fun into it because it is no fun. And I'm sure there are members in the family that it disturbs more than others. I've had one family say, last year we just asked them to take it outside. Go outside and, holler all you want. Huggers and sluggers. Go out there and slug it out and then come in here and let's hug and let's have dinner.
Yeah. Lee, I got to tell you, in my family, I always say, we're not going to talk about this. And if somebody even starts down that road, there are some of us, we are like we interfere. You know what I mean? We just run the interference, if you will, and just go, hey, I heard, so how's work going? Or we'll just try to kind of do a little re-pivot, if you will, and try to pivot the conversation to try to predict who's going to get into that. And especially as people, those individuals who start drinking a little bit too much wine, and maybe they thought to themselves they were not going to go there, but then they have like 2 glasses of wine and they're like, you know what? I love Donald Trump and I'm going to say it out loud. And I'm going to go out to my vehicle and get my MAGA. And you're like, oh Lord, here we Aunt so-and-so. Like, ruh-roh, and so maybe I'll take a plate to go. But, have you ever, in your lifetime, have you ever seen a time like this where we just cannot even have the conversation?
Well, I have to be honest here, Don. Since COVID, the tension has been building, and it's because of the uncertainty. And gosh, why don't we stop and think about what Thanksgiving's all about? And who would we rather be with at Thanksgiving?
Yes,
than our family. Now, it's interesting because in that same survey, they talked about the percent of people that lie so they don't have to go to the Thanksgiving dinner.
Wow.
And it's pretty high. Some people will say they have to work. Some people will say that they've already made other plans. I mean, and that percentage was like close to 50. And wouldn't it be great if you didn't have to put and I think that those people, maybe they're taking care of themselves. Maybe they're saying, I don't need the stress. Yeah. I don't need the tension. So I'm just going to skip it. So for all of your listeners out there, if there's somebody that has to work this Thanksgiving or already had plans, maybe you stop and think about how you make that Thanksgiving more inviting for them.
I love that. I saw the one survey said 90% of Americans do not want to talk about politics, just don't want to deal with it. And I think that's, as a general rule, I think that to me is a great indicator that most people post-pandemic just want to be with family. I know for my teenage sons, because we really didn't do a lot of the family stuff. And they love this time. Right now, they're so looking forward to we have family coming actually today, this afternoon, and then different family members tomorrow and the next day. And they've so been looking forward to this. And I think that's just a wonderful piece of it, is just celebrating the fact that we can be together,
Absolutely. Because a few years ago, we couldn't. And the joy of that really can emerge, not just from the great food, but from the company and from the memories. And enjoy those memories. Talk about.
One of the another study that I absolutely love is they said that in Florida, people hosting Thanksgiving dinner, they don't care in surveys. They don't care if people get too liquored up, too drunk at the Thanksgiving dinner. But the comment was, just don't steal their stuff. And I thought that was a hoot. Who steals your stuff? Your own family? I thought that one was hysterical.
I agree with you. I think those Floridians, they've had a little bit too much sun and wine.
They're having way too much fun in Florida. I don't know. In Philadelphia here, we've had all this dreary, rainy weather, but yeah, maybe they're having a great time. They went by the ages too. So they looked at, for example, Gen Z. They said they'll be celebrating with friends to avoid family drama. They don't want to deal with the family drama, and they're avoiding sort of generational family drama. I thought that one was pretty interesting.
I do too, because generational drama, boy, it just gets older and older and older.
I love it. And what's your advice as far as, because I think this can be a time of year when people, I think about my mom who we had lost to ALS Lou Gehrig's. You think about our little niece who had drowned, Joni, and she would have just recently celebrated her 16th birthday. And you think about that, and we're saying prayers for the family and just thinking about these individuals in heaven. But how do you How do you advise people when they're dealing with grief to say something to somebody who has expressed to you, even at the table in front of everybody? Because I'm sort of the big mouth, and I'll just come out and write and say it. Well, I'm thinking about Joni. I know she would, because we would have a cake for her. We would be singing happy birthday to her. And I know she's in heaven and she's smiling on us. That's my way. Some people might disagree with that and say, why would you bring that up? What's your advice on that?
Grief is so hard. And, grief is a process that you go through. And some people you go through sad, mad, denial, unhappiness, and getting to the point where you are, where you can recognize the joy and just remember the love. That's a great place to be. And, sometimes I think you don't have to use words to say anything. A hug, eyeball to eyeball, putting a hand on the heart. I'm very much into that I think touch is a powerful thing. So I think that and be intentful with how you express your grief. And maybe you do it one-on-one where it's a little bit quieter. So if it does bring a tear, it's not as overwhelming for everybody else.
That's great advice. It's really beautifully said. For you, in your journey of, first starting out with your little boys cross twin sons, like I said in the beginning, and, you're struck by a car as a pedestrian. You go through this whole journey of learning all about this. You've manifested what I see as most people could say that could be, oh my goodness, that could be something that would stunt the career growth of an individual. You, on the other hand, have turned it into really something new as far as, your Brain Performance Center, running a podcast, an expert interviewed on all these different national shows. And I saw one headline, how Lee Richardson is changing the world one healed brain at a time. What do you say to people as you give advice about even turning tragedy or tough times? Because, Lee, we obviously going through the pandemic, these have been very tough times, draining on our mental health, on our energy, all of that, people changing careers, losing jobs. Can you just share with us some of how you just switched up that energy and you've launched this into really a career, not just a career path, but a topic that now people are actually learning about and talking about and turning to you for this advice?
Well, and thank you for that. Those are kind words. And it hasn't stopped. I used to think about brain health. And actually, I was in your neck of the woods almost a month ago at a neuroscience summit at Wharton. And Michael Platt was using the term brain capital. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to steal that. So here's my one time to give him credit. But it is brain capital. Because if we stop and we think about it, if we invest in the brain at different stages of life, by the time you're 6, the brain has pretty much developed, but it's not finished developing. When I say pretty much developed, you have the neurons, you have the dendrites, but it doesn't finish developing until 25 or mid to late 20s. Then the 30s are rocking. Then the 40s, maybe you plateau. 50s, maybe you have some cognitive impairment. 60, maybe you have some cognitive decline. So if we continue to invest in our brain throughout our lifespan, it will certainly, number one, it'll give us a much richer, happier life. And that comes down to the relationships that we have with life.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. Well, Lee Richardson, founder and CEO and clinical director of the Brain Performance Center, we just appreciate you. I hope you have a blessed Thanksgiving and safe travels as you go see friends and family in California. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you. Have a peaceful Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Lee. Lee Richardson, I just think the world of her, and I think she always has some great advice.